It is a 47 square mile lake in southern Maine. It is not the same lake it was 10 years ago. An unnecessary environmental tragedy occurred when Scott Paper Company's S.D. Warren changed their management of the lake level in 1986. In 1992, after failing to obtain relief from state and local agencies, the Friends of Sebago Lake filed a formal complaint to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The complaint stated Scott Paper had withheld outflows of the lake by 40% during the spring, summer, and fall from 1986 to 1989, and that action violated their license, which does not allow for major changes in the operation of the dam without FERC approval. Scott Paper's FERC license was based on an ancient uniform flow agreement of the Presumpscot River, which empties Sebago Lake. Scott Paper Company's spokesperson, William Foley, described in a public lake level meeting the events that led to the change in lake level management. Quote, "We ran along for years and years without much comment, except when unusual weather caused unusual lake levels. The unusual weather of 1985, however, spawned the formation of a couple of interest groups who sought to bring pressure upon S.D. Warren for higher water levels through appeals to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. At the time, we saw no reason why a drought year should cause an operating change, so we resisted the change. In 1986, the Public Utilities Commission of Maine changed the way electricity is valued. The rates were changed to make the electricity more valuable in the winter than at other times. Now we saw a reason to change and thought we had a win-win situation between the high water advocates and the pricing of electricity. So we altered our operating plan to run lower flows in summer in order to save the water to run in the winter, when the cost of electricity was higher. This allowed us to decrease purchases of higher-priced winter electricity and thus lowered our operating costs." Unquote. The FERC commissioners appointed by President Clinton dismissed the complaint in 1994. According to FERC, the 40% reduction in outflows for 8 months of the year and the resulting higher water levels were minor changes. Could any other FERC-licensed dam withhold flows by 40% in the spring, summer, and fall, and that change be considered minor? This collection of video footage and pictures will show the major changes which occurred after S.D. Warren's win-win change in operation. By 1989, the lake's shoreline had changed forever. In 1989, on Fry's Island, several thousand feet of tree-covered embankment was undercut and slipped into the lake. One property owner lost 24 6-inch oak trees. Similar events were occurring around the lake. In Standish, this entire 50-foot embankment collapsed. Around the lake, complaints of beach loss were common. Beaches exposed to large open fetches of water suffered 2 to 3 feet of vertical beach loss. This picture of a Long Point beach taken in August 1962 has the same water level as this 1992 picture. With the loss of beach height, the 2 boulders were easily pushed landward by ice in recent winters. On the west end of Long Point, 3 pictures of the same cottage show beach loss against the retaining wall over a 42-year period. To protect property, retaining walls have been built by property owners because S.D. Warren, 30 times since 1917, had let the water rise above full pond. Because of some 1884 flowage rights deeds that were signed by many property owners, S.D. Warren, at some time in history, began referring to full pond as 6 inches above the rollway. No flashboards were in use. Even though isolated erosion prior to 1986 did occur during extreme high water storm events, it was balanced by the accretion or forward movement of sand during years of lower water. Note in the 1981 picture, the sand is at the same height on the seawall as in 1949. In the late 1980s, the 40% reduction in outflows caused a 2 to 3 foot rise in lake levels during the late summer and fall, which is the time of year with the greatest wave energy. By 1991, this is all that remained of the beach, as 2.5 vertical feet of sands had been eroded away. Along Jordan Bay at White's Bridge, this erosion was dispersing this greenish clay into the lake. The concrete cisterns used to be part of the shoreline. The islands of Sebago Lake were reduced in size by as much as several feet in some places. The clay-covered rocks and logs offshore from this erosion on a Dingley Island gave evidence to recent erosion. The most spectacular erosion occurred at Maine's finest inland beach, the Sebago Lake State Park's Songo Beach. In 1991, the legislature recommended a water level more reflective of the average levels from 1918 to 1986. In 1992, high water proponents persuaded the Department of Environmental Protection to mandate a compromise plan with levels above the historic median. This is the plan now followed. New erosion has been evident with no gain in accretion of sand to the upper reaches of the beaches. This 1996 May photo, lake level 266, mean sea level, 6 inches under full pond, looks east over the widest part of Songo Beach. Note the 6-inch camera case against the roots. This year, new roots are being exposed. This is the handicap ramp at Songo Beach. The state park's old trees are still falling. Many have been removed since 1990. In the late 1980s, the west end of the beach suffered the most serious erosion. Now the entire length of Maine's finest inland beach is seriously degraded. Herbert Hartman, the director of Maine State Parks, wrote in a 1992 letter to FERC that, quote, flooding and erosion of the Songo Beach constitutes a conversion of the use of the property to private power production and private marina boating uses and a loss of public outdoor recreation, unquote. The majority of approximately 100,000 visitors annually to the Songo Beach are Maine citizens. In the late 1980s, high water destabilized this Fry's Island embankment, exposing the lake to varved clays which were previously protected by vegetation and beach sand deposits. This July 1993 photo illustrates injection of clay turbidity into the lake. Along Route 35 at the southern end of Sebago, on property owned by the Portland Water District, 1,000 feet of forested embankment failed from bank toe erosion in 1992. At levels under full pond, waves now attack the bank. This June 1993 photo illustrates the extensive clay pluming along this eroded shoreline. This recent 1996 photo shows turbid water several hundred feet from shore. 3,000 feet of turbid water to the east on the same day during a wind event. Clay is pluming into suspension at the toe of the 60-foot bank. These pictures are about large expanses of turbid water adjacent to Portland Water District's intake pipes. If Portland Water District no longer qualifies for a waiver for filtration, it may cost their customers $20 to $25 million for a filtration facility in addition to annual operating costs. The $200,000 annually SD Warren saves on higher water is a paltry sum compared with possible filtration costs and the cost of armoring the shoreline with riprap. A small piece of glacial clay dispersed in a quart jar of water has taken 20 days to settle out if left perfectly still. Even then, the water is hazy. We do not know how these turbid clay waters are affecting deeper water or what effects this pollution has on phytoplankton, the lowest and most important end of the food chain. No one knows the effects of thermal inversion currents and underwater artesian springs have on maintaining the clay in suspension in deeper water. We do know that turbid glacial lakes are devoid of life in deeper depths. To better visualize clay dispersion, this video shows a piece of clay extracted from an eroded clay lens on Long Point. In the still water behind this eroded retaining wall, the clay-laden water flows down the gradient into the lake. Operating uniform lake outflows, regardless of rainfall, created a 9-foot range of water levels historically. A 6-foot range was common, and an 8-foot range occurred about once a decade. It was this range that gave Sebago its legendary reputation for a clean sandy bottom and beautiful broad beaches. The state and FERC water level plans will reduce permanently the range to 4 feet. Good beaches used to exist at the upper ranges of water levels. Only pictures do justice in describing the former great beaches of Sebago Lake. Long Point, 1914. Songo Beach, 1941. The State Park Camping Beach in the late 1940s. Long Beach, 1965. Songo Beach, 1964. Pictures of docks can attest to the great variation in lake levels, as does this Kettle Cove boat dock in 1955. The Friends of Sebago Lake employed a professional underwater diver and photographer to record the spread of aquatic plants into the state park's Songo Beach swimming area. This is taken at the outer perimeter of the rope swim boundary. Notice the wall of lobelia chutes beyond the ropes. Swimmers had broken most of the chutes in the swim area. The bottom has become coated with fine silts, very different from the rippled sand bottom it used to be. Much of the Songo River Delta is now lobelia and spike rush pasture. Note the force with which the diver uses to pull the spike rush roots free from the bottom sediment. Wave action can scour the bottom if the lake level is low enough. This picture, taken near the camping beach, shows the truckloads of lobelia and spike rush, which were deposited by an October 1995 storm. Unfortunately, this action only affected 75 feet of lake bottom from shore. Without a return to the full range of historic drawdowns, this condition of the lake bottom will persist. In the late 1980s, according to eyewitnesses, Jordan Bay and the Dingley Island region had been badly siltated by erosion. Anchor ropes and boat bottoms were coated by a sticky mud. Soon after, in the littoral zones, a vast proliferation of algae occurred, fueled by the high phosphate content of the eroded soils and clays. This 1992 video shows the aquatic macrophytes coated by a layer of green algae. According to the owner of the nearby cottage, this lake bottom was clear of plant and algae growth in the last 50 years. This 1995 video at the same location shows the spike rush has died and lies decomposing in the algaic mud. 1 mile to the east of Songo Beach is Point Sebago. This $13 million golf and beach resort, which boasts it will soon attract 400,000 visits per year, has benefited from the high water. This 1964 aerial photo shows an undeveloped marshy wetland shoreline. A 1994 photo shows a vastly altered shoreline. A separate lagoon, a roadway to the island, and a beach were all created by transporting gravel pit materials to the site in the 1960s. FERC and the state have defended higher water levels in the summer to ensure the economic interests of Point Sebago. Nature is attempting to return this area to a marsh. High water is necessary to keep the beach higher on the shoreline and away from eroded silts and an underwater jungle which waits in the cove. As one can see, this is not a quality waterfront for a main lake. The diver videotapes just outside the very shallow swim area. The cove needs to be dredged of the eroded silts so it can be replaced with clean sand. It is wrong the entire lake must suffer from governmental decisions catering to man-made beaches and marina owners who will not dredge, unlike their predecessors who did. Sebago Lake was famous for its great landlocked salmon, superb sparkling clean water, and broad sandy beaches. The great salmon are now extinct because of man's mistakes and past state fish management. We will never see a 43-inch salmon like this one taken at the turn of the century. It is not too late for the water quality in beaches. In the long term, protecting Sebago Lake will give Maine a greater economic return. Our politicians must have the backbone and courage to do what is right.